thanks very much for taking the time to do this. Really appreciate it. Love the
Our
new
pleasure.
album. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to hearing loads about it. Start off with the obvious questions. How did you all meet, and when did you decide to get the band together?
Yeah. How did we meet? I met Peter in New York City playing in bands, and just around. We would see each other around, and we would look at each other and say, "I'm going to be in a band with that guy one day." And then lo and behold, we did the Hedwig show together, which is just kind of a wild show, very punk, very glam, in New York City. And Mike was doing it as well. And we all kind of came together that way.
So when did you come on board, Michael?
Yeah, like Matt said, I played Hedwig in New York, and Peter was the drummer in that band. So in a way, I fronted a band that he was also in. We were playing other people's songs, and there was a great deal of banter in the form of a play script. But essentially, we were kind of got the feel of what it was like to be in a band, and then Peter and Matt did it together as well after the fact. But I was hanging out with Peter sometime after he was back in New York after having gone out on tour with the show, and he and Matt had been creating some audio tracks together, and we went to dinner one night. I went back up to the studio with Peter, the studio where Peter's sitting right now, and he played me some of the tracks, and I just casually said, you know, these are great. If you ever want somebody to mess around and sing on these, that would be fun. And you know, not too long after that, he invited me down, and I wrote some words for I think it was Love American Style, which is on the EP. We recorded that. It felt like something. We kept going. We started to write additional stuff, and it sort of happened in spite of any conscious intention to start a band. But it just we songs kept coming, and we looked at each other and said, maybe we should book a gig. Maybe we should play some of these live and come up with a name. And yeah, it just sort of happened that way.
And I'm sure you get asked this all the time. Where does the name Princess Goes to the Butterfly Museum come from?
Matt?
Mike, why don't you take this one? Oh,
No.
Yeah, you can take it, Mike.
Oh yeah. We went to a party together uptown in the early days, right around the time I was talking about. And so it was a time that coincided with us feeling like we needed to come up. And anyway, we went to this party. I think it was Matt's friend, but I didn't really know anybody there except these two guys, and people were passing around this punch. We drank it, and things got kind of loopy. I think the only explanation we can come up with is that there was something in it. Anyway, there's some sort of, you know, hallucinogen. And, you know, that's fun enough, I guess, but maybe not the most polite thing to do to your guests. Anyway, we started to freak out, and we all left, and we were walking down the Upper West Side, and we walked and we were getting increasingly loopy, and just felt like if we hang together, we're gonna get through this. And we were passing the Natural History Museum, and Matt looked up, and he was like, "You guys look on the stairs," and he said, "Do you see her?" And we said, "Yes." And we sort of we had a collective hallucination, I guess. We saw this princess walking into the museum, opening the doors, butterflies flew out. I think Matt was like, "It's princess, she's going to the butterfly museum," and princess goes to the butterfly museum. And it's sort of this collective eureka moment where we were like, okay, I think that's what our band's going to be called. So I don't think I've even compared notes enough to find out who this person was, but whoever they are, thank you. And don't do that to people.
Great story. Michael, there's a saying that rock stars want to become actors and vice versa. Did you ever imagine yourself fronting a band?
I suppose I imagine, I mean, you know, I think anytime anybody listens to music they really love by a band, they kind of are imagining themselves fronting the band, or at least in the band. I think I've always harbored some sort of rock and roll fantasy, one that was maybe fulfilled for the first time when I did Hedwig, and got a taste for what it felt like to front a band. I've always loved music. I've always loved singing. I've done a lot of singing, just never really made any concerted effort to be in a band before. But yeah, I mean, I think it was something that was a fantasy, but I always imagined, if I was asked to imagine that it would remain a fantasy, you know. And like I said, this band materialized without any of us consciously planning for it to be a band. So just feel very lucky that I hooked up with these guys. But yeah.
Cool. And Matt, you've been a member of Blondie, and Peter, you've been in the Wallflowers and your own band. What did you learn from your experiences in those bands that you brought the Princess Goes to the Butterfly Museum?
You want to go first, Peter?
Yeah. Well, like, you know, I have been in a lot of bands, and from the Wallflowers to Morningwood, this other New York band. And I think it was, I mean, you know, this collaboration with Mike and Matt is so special. It's got its own energy to it. We just feel like we're kind of along for the ride. And, you know, there's three of us. It's a really nice number to have a three-piece. There's always a tiebreaker. You know, it's very democratic in Princess. And there's also, you know, I think what the past experience has brought to this is, you know, Princess has a very DIY ethos, and, you know, we started our own record company. We're, you know, producing our own records. We want to do as much as we can on our own, and yeah, of course we got great management and people helping us and distribution. But, you know, I think the past experiences is like, I think there's a lot of bands out there that are like, oh, if we only had this one person, if we worked with this one producer, if such and such would help us write a song, or, you know, I think, and I've felt that a lot, where, like, you know, you're always waiting for somebody to do something for you. And I think this is one of those creative collaborations where, and maybe it's just because of where we all are at in our respective lives, but we don't do that. We try to do stuff on our own, and like I said, we have a lot of help with great management, and but that DIY spirit is kind of new for me, and that's really a nice thing.
Yeah, a lot of bands are going down that route these days.
Yeah.
Michael, you performed in David Bowie's Lazarus, and like him, you're an actor and now a songwriter. Did you take inspiration from Bowie going into this project?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've been, you know, a fan of his music for years. You know, meeting him, working with him, collaborating alongside him in what turned out to be, you know, the final stage of his creative life was and will remain like a highlight of my career and life. I think maybe working with him and perhaps when this revealed itself, the possibility of this band coming into being, I would say that having had the experience working on that show and working with him probably did something to make me feel maybe that much more like I had the right to consider it a legitimate endeavor, you know.
Yeah. You're about to release your debut album. Thanks for coming. Really enjoying it. It's a great album. Did you go into the recording with any preconceived ideas, what kind of songs you wanted to write and how you wanted it to sound?
The short answer is no. We don't really ever preconceive much of our music making. It seems to preconceive us, almost the opposite. Like we're just, yeah, like, but you know, we've been recording nonstop kind of since we formed about 3 years ago, and we spent a good year and a half, 2 years playing around New York before everything shut down. And we released our first EP in this past April, right as shit was shutting down. And I think you know, we just did what we kept doing, what we always did, just keep recording and keep making music. And all of a sudden, you know, at some point it just occurred to us that we were sitting on a great collection of songs that seemed to hang together. And so again, it kind of just occurred to us like, yeah, let's just keep doing this and let's put this record out this year.
And what was it like putting it all together during the pandemic? What was the process of trying to finish off the songs?
Well,
Matt, you go.
Yeah. So luckily we had technology at our fingertips. We all have, you know, little recording setups in our respective homes, even if it's just an iPhone, which can be great to record into. And then we would send things around to each other, put them together, and also meet in the studio where Peter is now, which has been Peter's studio for a long time in the East Village in Manhattan. We would meet there, we'd do some recording, we'd go back home, we'd record. Then we mixed at Electric Lady in Manhattan, in Greenwich Village. And Electric Lady was really cool vibe to mix a record there. It was my first time being there to mix an album. Yeah, it was so sort of everything, a lot of elements coming together, non-traditional.
Mm-hmm. And Michael, in your day job, you play characters because you're an actor. Some songwriters write songs from characters' points of view, but with these songs, you've written from your own personal experiences. Why did you choose to do it that way, to write the songs that way?
I mean, I think in some cases, maybe the point of view is somewhat characterized, but yeah, it's always me. Yeah. I don't know. It's not something that I, you know, thought, you know, do I want to do this or do I want to do that? It's just what happened. So maybe given that in my day job, I play characters, I was more interested in doing something that was more explicitly in my own voice.
Was there any music in particular you guys were listening to during the recording of the album that might have influenced the sound?
It's weird. I don't listen to that much music. That's a terrible thing to say. No. But for that reason, in general, when we're making a record, it's touch and go. You know, you want to. For me, it's more out of like fear that something is going to get stuck in my head and like I'm not going to, you know, or some idea of how we should sound is going to get stuck in my head, or what's happening in music today should be a thought in my head. But it's usually when I'm making music, which is almost all the time, I really try to, if I'm going to listen to something, it's probably going to be one of my dad's old jazz records, or, you know, some a cappella music, or Mike's been turning me on to some cool choral music, and just nothing that might get stuck in my brain as like a thing that, you know, I should be jealous of or want to emulate. So I don't know if that makes sense, but for me, it works to not really listen to a lot of music when I'm making music, just because my brain will just steal shit, you know?
Let's talk about
Yeah,
some.
I was. I'll just throw out there. I was listening to the album by Monica, the Greek singer from 2015. Great record. Produced in New York, so it's sort of a New York Greek connection, and many influences and disparate styles from. I don't know. It's a brilliant record, and I would say I was inspired just in terms of bringing together a lot of elements, a lot of unique elements, yet retaining the overall, I guess, identity of the band, where you listen to it and you know that it's us.
Mhm. What about you, Michael? Was anything inspiring you?
I think like Peter, I was probably more just focused on the music we were making during the, period of recording proper. As far as influences more broadly, I mean, I think, we're all influenced by everything we've heard over the, decades we've been living. No like explicit conversations of how we imagine our sound being defined. We just let the influences be what they are and probably create things that are in some way a product of the place where our three influences intersect.
Mhm. Well, let's talk about some of the tracks. My favorite track on the whole album is Eden Eraser. It's pure synth pop. I love it. I love the piano riff. It really gets me moving. What's the story behind that track? What's it about? What's Eden Eraser mean?
Matt, do you want to talk about the music, you guys? While I try to figure out what Eden Eraser means.
The music started. Matt came over to the studio, and we write all kinds of ways. Mark, but one of the ways that we like to write is where we're all in the room. And this day it was just Matt and me. We were jamming. I was on the drums, and Matt was on keys. No, I think started on electric bass, and we did a long jam. I recorded it all. Matt left, listened to it, and sort of tried to give it some structure. And the B section, which is the scary even though lyric, that was kind of already there as a part that we've been jamming on. And then, but the A section that starts the song and the verse part, that was just cutting the song up and cutting the jam up to find this one little bass line that Matt played with this beat that I was doing. I just found it to be really hypnotic. So I just looped that. It wasn't something that we played more than once. It wasn't like a long jam. That part of it was just a fleeting moment. And it seemed to work really well with that B section that we had actually created. And so it was just kind of, that's how the music came together. So that was how the music came together.
Well, the latest single is Armageddon Suite. It's a beautiful song about heightened romantic sense because the world is ending, and it has a great video, like all your singles do. Do you think it's important to have good videos to represent the songs visually?
I think it's a nice way to augment the sort of what the song presents. I mean, our videos are, like our music, pretty eclectic and different. And that was one that was shot around where I have a house upstate in New York, and we knew we had that great vehicle that is Peter's baby, that 68 Ford Bronco, and we had this vague notion of us all in coveralls. Are we all sanitation workers? Are we grave diggers? Like, what is it? And there's some sort of journey that we're making, but it's we work with this director, Samantha Scafidi, and sort of go out with a vague notion, and then, you know, we'll see what happens. The same thing happened with the video we shot with her directing down in the subway in New York. And that was a video where we had an ending in mind, and somehow the final footage that we shot disappeared. And so an ending had to be improvised that I think in the end was much more mysterious and cool, you know, ending on Matt's sunglasses with that, that sort of flare going through. Is it something beautiful? Is it something foreboding? It's nice to create things that are sort of strong and evocative, but also pretty ambiguous. And but yeah, we really enjoy it. I mean, it's a kick, you know, to go out and sort of do some collective improvisation with the cameras rolling, and then see what comes together.
Yeah, the video was great, and the album includes a cover of Fantagram's "Cruel World." Why? It's a great version. Why did you just decide to cover that and put it on the album?
That was Matt sent us the track and was like, "This sounds like a Princess song that they stole from us." And no, I think Matt sent it around saying like, "Wow, this is very princessy," you know, like inspiration for Princess. And we ended up. Matt built that track, and we ended up starting to play it live, and our fans that came to see us like really liked it. We'd end the show with it, and it's a nice tribute to Fantagram. Matt and Mike went and saw them play in Brooklyn, and were really inspired by the show.
And do each of you have a favorite track on the album? What would be the one that would stand out? You know,
whichever one I'm listening to at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, I don't know. It's hard to pick a favorite. It depends on my mood. You know. You guys have a favorite?
Like Mike said, it changes a lot. Matt, what do you think?
It's constantly changing. I mean, it's like saying, what's your favorite song? Like, I remember being a kid and you would ask like, what's your favorite song? What's your favorite song? But of course it would change monthly. When you're a kid, a month is an eternity. But yeah, you know, it's just always a changing process. You know, what's your favorite song? What's your favorite album? I don't know.
Well, the album artwork's very interesting. It looks like the front of a museum. You know, what's the story behind it?
It's actually a photograph it's obviously a photograph. It's actually a photograph. It's a photograph of an abandoned, decaying shopping mall.
Right.
Which, you know, there's something about the state of the world, and maybe the state of the world in the United States, that feels metaphorically represented in a potent way by a crumbling shopping mall. Yeah, we collectively just talked about the idea of finding an image of an abandoned mall and finding something that might work for cover art. We found this photographer. I think the mall is in the Midwest, maybe Ohio, and most of them were interior photos. But we came across this one and did, you know, like that it also did look like the facade of a museum. And it just stood out and stuck in our minds. And fortunately, we contacted him and sent him the record, and he agreed to let us use the art.
Whenever everything gets safe and sensible, do you have any plans to perform the album on the road and do a tour or whatever?
Yeah, we definitely hope to.
Absolutely. We're starving to play live, and
hopefully in Belfast as well. We love Ireland.
Definitely
yeah.
come here. Yeah, absolutely. It'd be great to have you.
Gotta. I was there in 2010, I think, with Blondie, in Belfast. Beautiful audience over there. Can't wait to go back with Princess.
Yeah, I think Blondie, the Limelight, I think you played then.
That sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely come.
Yeah, we will.
And you've all performed on stage on Broadway. How different the mindset is it for performing on Broadway than just doing your normal shows as the band? Is it different or is it just the same?
It's kind of, Broadway is pretty brilliant for musicians. I mean, the show we were in, in all fairness, was an anomaly in that it was a show about a rock or a glam rock band in concert. So the show itself was a concert. So that felt very normal, but what was different is just doing it 7 times a week and, going to the theater, and it was really magical. I know a lot of rock bands don't get their start, on Broadway, and I kind of grew up in rock and roll thinking that Broadway was pretty cheesy in a jazz hands kind of way, but I'm also a huge fan of theater, but playing the show every night and was kind of awesome. Like, I guess it's like being on tour, but running in place at the same time, and just the repetition and the getting on the subway and getting to the theater and doing the show and then getting going, it was pretty amazing time. So much fun.
Mm-hmm. And what goes through your mind when you're about to walk on the stage? How do you feel?
Usually I think, oh, I forgot to pee. And I have a little cup. I have a cup right next to me. This is an old trick. You carry a cup with you, and yeah. But seriously, usually I have to pee, and I feel slightly nauseous. I remember my friend told me once that Pavarotti, she was standing next to Pavarotti as he was about to go on stage, and he turned to her and said, "I feel like I'm going to die. I feel like I'm going to die." And it's very telling that, possibly the greatest singer in the world feels like he's going to die when he's about to go on stage. So
yeah, there's always
not to compare us to Pavarotti, but
there's always like butterflies. I hate to use that word, but like I get it anyway. There's always this feeling in your stomach of a little bit of nervousness and excitement mixed all together.
Yeah, I'm either really nervous or I'm really nervous about the fact that I don't feel really nervous. So either way, I'm nervous.
That's very nerve-wracking. Yeah, why don't I feel nervous? What's happening? Yeah.
There's also
like
this feeling of wanting to be there, like, and it's weird. Playing live is such a drug in itself that I find myself trying to like focus on being present, which is a great way of not being present if you're focusing too hard. It's a weird hyper realistic moment,
That sense of like the only way to contend with whatever the feeling is to go through it, to go on stage and go through with the performance. It's like, walking into a crashing wave.
I like that.
Feels good.
Last one. Out of all the music in your collection, which artist or band do you have the most albums by?
I would say I have the most Miles Davis records. My father's a jazz musician. He gave me his record collection, and I have, I think, every Miles record on vinyl, just because he was a big Miles fan, and so that's probably the most I have.
It's either Thelonious Monk or Bob Dylan. Probably Thelonious Monk, just, there's maybe more recordings, but yeah, one of those two.
I think it's funny. Probably, I would probably have to say Blondie. I just have so many Blondie records floating around in my collection. That's probably because they, I get them also. They send them to me. stuff I've worked on and whatever. But I'll stand by that regardless.
Cool. Just one more, actually, for you, Michael. How excited are you to reprise the role as Dexter for a new series?
You know, I would liken the feeling to the feeling we were just describing about going on stage. Like, the only way to contend with the feelings I have is to do it, and it's I'm excited because, you know, this has been a long time in the conception and the preparation, and we start shooting Monday, so it feels good to know that there's nothing left to do but to do it, you know. But I'm excited to do this because, along with viewers, fans of the show, I myself am curious about what the hell happened to him. So I'm gonna find out.
Yeah, well, hopefully he's not a lumberjack anymore. You know, let's see what happens.
Yeah, just only cutting down the bad trees. Thanks,
Nice
everybody.
talking to you. Good luck with the album.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.